I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to dye some speckled yarn, where we're going to start off dyeing a tonal layer and then take 3 colors and speckle them on top to create a fun colorway. Now, one of the things that's going to be really nice is that I'm planning to use the same color I'm using for our base background color as a speckle, just to give a little element of a monochromatic speckle on background color, but we're also going to have other colors in there, so I think it'll be really, really nice. Now, the colors we are going to be using today are intense iris, teal green, and persimmon. And this beautiful persimmon orange is the color that I want to have be the main color on our yarn. And speaking of our yarn, today we're going to be dyeing Knit Picks Stroll Fingering Weight yarn. This yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and the yarn is dry. And starting with dry yarn when you want to have a background layer can give you more tonal variation because some parts will sink in first, others won't. Persimmon is not a color I've used a ton, so I don't have a good innate feel of how quickly it absorbs. But we'll start with a gram of dye, I think, on 300 grams of yarn, and then maybe we'll want more color, and so we'll edit it from there. But let's go mix up that orange color. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so I could measure out the dry persimmon powder. And I weighed out 1 gram of dye and then dissolved it in hot tap water. Now again, we can edit the color in the dye bath as we proceed. If the color seems like it's too pastel, I can always go and measure out more dye. If the color is a little bit too intense, I can remove the yarn from the dye bath a little bit early. But if you're concerned about your color being too dark, remember that it's easier to add more color than it is to make a colorway lighter, because some colors will strike to your yarn really, really fast. and if that happens, then you can't make it lighter. In my dye bath, I have 24 cups of water. And before I bring over the orange dye, it's worth thinking about, should I add acid before we add the yarn or not? When you're using acid dyes to dye yarn, you need to add acid as part of the process. But when you decide to add that acid in the dyeing process can affect how much coverage you get over your yarn. So if I add our yarn to the dye bath with no acid, we are likely to have the dye bind to the yarn slower and could get more even coverage. But if I have acid in there already, the dyes will start striking to the yarn right away, giving us more tonal variation. A lot of this is very pigment dependent though, which again, since persimmon and I aren't besties yet, I don't have that feel of how fast it strikes. Like, I know if I was using a color like pink orchid, which binds so fast, then I would want to start with no acid if I was hoping to get coverage. And also I'd start with pre-soaked yarn. Stroll is so absorbent that if I wanted to start with it pre-soaked, I definitely could. It would only take a minute or 2 for me to get the fibers saturated. So that's all worth keeping in mind. But I think I am going to add acid in here right now. About 6 tablespoons of white vinegar, a ratio of 2 tablespoons of vinegar to 8 cups of water. And let's go grab our dye now. Now, I know I said persimmon is not a color I know well, and when I dissolved it, notice how opaque and cloudy our dye is here. That means that we've got a bit of a suspension going on and it's not dissolved all the way. I bet it'll dissolve better in hot water, but this is, again, something, the more you play with the color, the more you learn about the color. Now, our dye bath is warm. It's not super hot yet, but I don't want to put the plastic cup in because I think it might melt. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse it out with more hot tap water and then bring over my tongs to stir things up. And it's potentially still a little cloudy. You can't really see the tongs beneath the surface, but at the same time, we might be okay. But now let's go ahead and bring over our yarn. And I'm going slow, but also need my tongs to help push it in. I don't want to overload the pot. This is gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna lift the yarn up. We still have lots of dye. Bring it back down. The goal isn't necessarily to have darker one end and lighter at the other. It's just to have some variation throughout, but stirring the yarn in the pot is allowing the dye to access some more of those other areas. And we've got some color left. A lot of our color is in the yarn, but I think we've got a really nice like color that we have some areas that are more pastel, some areas that are more, it's like not quite peach, but slightly peach leaning, which is really nice. So I'm gonna let this sit in the pot for at least 20 minutes, I think, just to give the yarn time to let a lot of that color absorb. And then, well, we'll come back to start thinking about our next steps. But I think even where the color is more saturated, it is light enough that if we try to do some chunky persimmon speckles on top of it, those will still show up. I am now going to turn off the heat over here and grab our yarn. Oh yeah, our dye bath is clear. I'm going to set this aside to cool off. And so that way we can add speckles on top. I have a pair of backup tongs, but bummer. They're not as long, so I'm gonna need to see if I can get a long one. But anyway, I'm gonna let this cool until it's closer to room temperature before we start speckling on it. Okay, I'm gonna take our tonal yarn and we're gonna come and lay it out. And I'm going to lay it on its side and really try to spread things out so this way we can get good coverage. Now, we will be doing some persimmon on persimmon speckles here, but what I can attest to already is that of the three colors, the persimmon is one that spreads a little bit more. So I think that those speckles will be the most subtle of all of our colors once we add them on here. So that's just good to keep in mind. Now the yarn mop we're gonna use when I have gloves on my hands. I just popped in a steamer basket for like literally a minute. But this is one from another project and I will continue layering color on here. It'll be just mostly off camera. Now I'm gonna go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and we'll start speckling. I feel like my white balance on the camera today is a little too yellow. But I'm going to start with the persimmon color, and I'm taking up some of the powder, and I am sprinkling it on, going a little heavy, mainly because I want to be able to see where it has been placed. Now, how much we see it in the end will be interesting to see. Mainly because like I saw this a lot when I used these three colors in that other project that I mentioned, but the reason why it was so visible is because the colors spread out a lot, and so that is what I'm going to keep an eye out for. This is the fun thing about doing two projects back to back, and I don't know which video will be coming out first. I've got the teal green, and right now I'm going sort of across everything, but when I flip the yarn and add the colors, I plan to not pay attention to the order I did the first time, and so that's going to mix things up a bit more. We're on the last legs of this teal green. It's definitely not a problem, but as I go through at this stage, I'm taking the dye that's on my gloves, adding it to our yarn mop, which is just a bonus skein of color. Now, I know that how muddy the colors get in the yarn mops may not be for everyone, which is totally fine, because I like it. Now, this intense iris is showing up very well in my eye right now, and is definitely heavier. I'm going a little heavier than I did with the teal, just because I can see it and I like it, and I'm just adding a little bit of it kind of randomly all over as well. Now, this is a color that sometimes disappears a little bit when dissolved and then shows up a bit with a vengeance later on. Maybe less so with powders as it does with when I'm using it as a liquid dye. But I'd say at your view right now, things don't look like very much. But I promise you can see the persimmon on top. But I think that that's some teal right there, and then some iris. Those colors are feeling just like dark blobs right now. I have a feeling once we heat set the colors, and so they spread a tiny bit, and then the yarn dries, we'll see the like different hues a little bit more, in theory. But even if they end up this subtle, I like where we're going, and I'm excited to carry on. I did not wait very long at all before coming to flip the yarn so we can dye the other side. Now, I am being very careful as I am laying the yarn back down to not rub it very much. It might get rubbed a little bit, but the more friction you have between the powder and the surface, the more spread and blending you'll get, which sometimes is something that you want more than others. Other times it's not a bad thing at all. I know it's a little hard to see exactly what I'm doing because so little powder is coming out at any given time. The goal is to have a dusting of the colors, knowing that as they sink in, some of the colors are going to have a bigger punch than others, depending on how thick the particles are when they land onto the surface of the yarn. And with this kind of technique, I know that we will maintain our orange backdrop even if our other colors spread. It's going to be a predominantly orange yarn. But the colors will both be a little bit more where I've placed them and have a little bit more punch than if I was doing something more immersion with a lot more water, just because the colors aren't going to be spreading quite as much as they would otherwise. I continued to gently move the yarn and add more color until I was satisfied with our coverage. I am very happy with our coverage, and I want to go straight to the steamer basket. On that last flip, I only added a little bit more persimmon, just for some subtle depth and dimension. But you can see we've got spread of our colors. Very carefully going to the steamer basket. Now we have a little dye on our counter still, and so that's the other purpose of our yarn mop here. Plopping her down to wipe up these leftover colors. Now, I know that this colorway may not be everyone's favorite. I am still curious to see how our purple and teal are going to feel on top of the orange when the yarn is done. But for now, I'm going to reserve judgment, and as I bring over some water to continue wiping down the counter, and we're going to leave the yarn in the steamer basket for 30 minutes before we go and take a closer look. I had peeked and checked in on this at one point, and ooh, I see the blue and the green, but you're steamy, so maybe you can't. Ooh, I went heavy. Now, not as heavy as like my Hanukkah oops, but I wanted to make sure that the colors were some that you could see from far away. Now, again, the combination might not be everyone's cup of tea. I think it's cool, and you can't see because we're steamy. I'm gonna set this aside to cool before we wash it. And in the meantime, I am going to steam set our yarn mop for 30 minutes. And I'll remove this off camera, let it cool completely, and also wash it off camera. I'm going to admit my impatience. The yarn is still a little bit warm, but I'm gonna wash it now. And you can see a little bit of steam. It's been over 45 minutes since I washed it. Now, I do not recommend doing this. While the yarn is warm, you can get more colors that end up bleeding. This is a this is a superwash yarn, so therefore I am not concerned about felting, but going from warm yarn to cold can cause felting. And I'm really only mentioning that it was still a bit warm just because that's the reality of our situation here. But it doesn't seem like we're not seeing any color bleed, and so it doesn't seem to be causing any issues this time. Oh man. But, you know, sometimes I break my own rules. Now I am washing the yarn with cold water. You can do like lukewarm or cool. Sometimes the cold tap water is super, super cold. So I like to make it a hair warmer. But you want cold because again, using hot water can, it's counterintuitive, but hot water can disrupt the interactions between acid dyes and the yarn, especially with pigments that are more prone to being bleeders. Because I guess then those interactions are just weaker. But anyway, I am thrilled. I think we're out of focus. But I see our teal and our purple on the orange. Oh, this is very unlike things that I've dyed before, and I'm so curious to hear what people think about it. But anyway, into my spin dryer to remove the liquid, and we'll see you when it's dry. Now that the yarn is dry and I take a step back, yes, I see the orange, but also from where I'm standing up and even on the little monitor of the camera, I can see our teal and iris speckles. When we zoom in, we see those persimmon speckles too, even on some more concentrated areas. Screenshot. I mean, it's the easiest to see where our yarn is a little bit more pastel, but it worked, and I think our yarn is gorgeous. I know this color combination may not be for everyone, but I'm happy to push myself and take risks sometimes, because I feel like if you were to substitute the orange with like more of a lilac or a blue, in a heartbeat, that would have been a colorway that I would expect myself to do. But to go and speckle with colors that are on the opposite end of the color wheel is really exciting. Now our yarn mop turned out beautiful. It's fun to see the relative proportions of the colors. Yes, things are muddier here. We do still have a reasonable amount of orange, but the iris does stand out a little bit more. I think that that one also was like stickier on the gloves, so we got more of it there. But this is just a fun bonus colorway. Let's go twist everything up. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I had so much fun playing with these colors. I knew when I pulled them originally that it was a very me type of colorway, even though it's a combination I don't reach for very often. And so I'm really glad that I went for using the orange as the star, because honestly, my gut would have been more usually to go for the teal or the iris, just because those are colors that I usually gravitate towards or reach for. And so it's fun to see what kind of magic and fun and beauty we can create. I do have another video, which has come out before this one, where I use these same colors. And if you'd like me to do more with them, please leave your suggestions below. I do keep track of viewer requests and suggestions and questions, and pull from them a lot of times when I'm planning out the videos I want to create in the month. And so I value your feedback. Even if your feedback is to say, this is not my favorite color combination, or Rebecca, I've seen you do better. Negative, constructive criticism or feedback on your own color preferences is never unwelcome, and you never need to feel bad about that. And then of course, engaging with the videos is the biggest way you can help support the content here on the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. But if you want to help support ChemKnits on more levels, go to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, which is filled with hand-dyed yarn that's been featured in my videos. And each skein of yarn, and most of them were featured in videos, but if it was featured in a video, it'll be labeled with the video and video title and approximate publication date, so that way you can go back and find the video and watch me dye the yarn all over again as you're using it, which I think is pretty darn cool. Oh man, I'm now wanting to dye more speckles, a lot more speckles, and I don't know, I'm just feeling excited and inspired to play with happy, bright, summery colors. Even if they're more jewel tones, I don't know, I'm just really excited to play with more colors this year. Thank you so much for watching.